Hi everyone! In today's episode we're going to start looking at the different aspects of wine in depth. We did the first 8 episodes. It was more like an wine introduction in general, and in today's episode we're beginning to travel around the world in each of the different countries in depth. We're starting with France, and in order to keep my videos at about 10 minutes I'm going to split France into 2 different episodes. So let's go to look at southern France to start with, and I'm Nicolas Seltzer, wine expert. Let's do France number 1. So this is the map that we reviewed before with the northern and the southern hemisphere and the different wine growing regions around the world. We're going to start with the old world and specifically with France, and then we're going to go through the rest of the different wine growing regions around the world or specific countries. And for our beginning now, we have to start with the old world and specifically with France. Okay, so we have a map of France here, and I have marked the different wine growing regions, or at least the most important. This pretty much covers most of it, at least. And some of the major or most important topics about France is, well, they are a wine producing region since 600 years before Christ. This is when the Phoenicians established in the area what is known as Provence. Later, the Romans actually gave the name of Provence to this area because it means province. And they called it my province because this was very important for them as a supply area for grapes for wine. Some of the best wines that the Romans had, they were coming from this area. Well, France has been the most important wine country in the world. Today, they produce some of the most amazing and most expensive wines that you could find. And the highest reputation also, and the highest scores. The development in France is related in arrival from the Phoenicians, then later the Romans, which developed very much in this area of Provence. Then we had the church took over when the Roman Empire fell, and they developed very much everything that was related to, of course, agriculture in general, but vines as well. So we owe to the Augustine monks a lot of the knowledge and technology that is available today related to wine. Now, France, one of the great things about it is the different geographies and different climates that there are available that allows them to produce wines in very different grapes, in very different styles of wine. Now, also most of the known grape varieties we saw in the chapters before when we were discovering and aromas and flavors, and we were looking at the different grape varieties, most of them come from France. Now, one of the difficulties about France is that we are used to in the New World, or at least in the newer countries that produce wine, that the bottles are labeled by the grape variety. So we know Cabernet Sauvignon, we know Chardonnay, we know Sauvignon Blanc, and we know the grape varieties. But in France, it's different. In France, the different geographical areas are allowed to grow a certain grapes, and this is based on different legalities. So that area will produce certain grapes. So you really need to know the area where the wine is coming from to know which grape variety is. We're going to review the different areas, and we're going to explain which grape varieties come from these different areas. But it's much more difficult to understand the labeling in French wine than in New World wine. Now, as I mentioned, France produces some of the finest wines around the world, and they have their tiers of qualities, which are levels. And the most important and the highest one is the AOC, which is the Appellation d'Origine Contrôlée. Then they have what is called the Vin de Pays, and then Vin de Table, which will be table wine. So these are the generalities of France, and let's go into each of the areas in particular. So we are starting from the south of France, and we're going to start with the province of Provence, or the appellation growing region of Provence. This is one of the oldest wine growing regions in France. It dates back to 600 years before Christ. This is when the Phoenicians arrived through the Mediterranean and established in Provence. and developed the vines for grapes for making wine. One of the great things about Provence is that it has a variety of soils and different climates that allows the growth of both white and red grape varieties. So you will find in Provence both red wines and white wines. Now, the most classic wine from the Provence region is Rosé. Rosé is made out of red grapes, very light, crisp, fresh, and is made in the same way that white wines are made. This is basically a cold fermentation that allows the rosé wine to be crisp and very fresh. And this is great because it's a perfect combination with all the seafood that you get from the Mediterranean. This region is really famous because actually the name Provence means province, and the Romans, this was very important for the Romans during the Roman Empire. This was the best origin for grapes and wines for the Roman Empire, and they call it Provence because it was my province, meaning this is where my wines come from, and this is where the name comes from. So this is a little bit about Provence. So next move into the following wine growing region. Following the Mediterranean coastline, we have now the Languedoc-Roussillon region, which is the largest wine producing region in France. It is responsible for about 1/3 of the total production, so it's a very, very important wine growing region in France. It is also rich in history. It's a little younger than Provence, but not much. You know, it's from 500 years before Christ. Provence is 600, and it was planted originally by the Greeks. This region has a lot of different type of climates that allows for the growing of grapes that make reds, whites, rosé, sparkling, and fortified wines. Now, the region is famous for blending grape varieties like Syrah, Grenache, Carignan, and Mourvèdre. So in this region, you're going to find wines that are blends of these different type of grape varieties. Also, the region is quite famous for their sparkling wine called Crémant de Limoux, which is a very high-end and very high-quality sparkling wine that is said to be a competitor to Champagne. Champagne is the most expensive wine, sparkling wine, and we will talk about the region later, but it makes the Languedoc-Roussillon region very interesting for having these blended wines and also this Crémant de Limoux sparkling wine. Also, one of the really interesting things about this region, well, being by the Mediterranean, which is phenomenal, you have the possibility of tasting very good quality wines that are great value because they are not expensive and they are in general less expensive than other regions, and the quality is very high. So very interesting region to visit. We're going to look at the Rhone Valley a little further north from Provence and Languedoc region, and this is a region that goes along the Rhone River. The vineyards were planted back in the 600 before Christ by the Greeks, and this area has a diversity of soils and also a Mediterranean climate influence. This combination allows the area to produce some very high-end wines. The region is divided into the northern Rhone and the southern Rhone, and the major area where most of the wines are produced is what is called Côtes du Rhône. This is an area that brings in a little bit or a section of the northern Rhone and the southern Rhone, and as a whole, it's the Côtes du Rhône. Now, in the northern Rhone, with granite soils, the area specializes in the grape Syrah. And the most famous locations and the most expensive wines that come from the northern Rhone are coming from a location called Hermitage or Côte Rôtie. Now, the wines that come from these areas are really fine wines, some of them costing about $2,000 a bottle. And these are wines that are very high-end and wines that will age beautifully through years in time. Now, in the southern Rhone, we have a different type of soil, which is limestone and clay, and produces different type of wines. These are blended wines, and the most known are the Châteauneuf du Pape, which are wines made mainly with the Grenache grape variety, blended with Mourvèdre and Cinsault. Overall, the Rhone Valley is a really important growing region in France, and has some very, very high-end wines. So in the concepts to remember of this week's episode, we would like to remember some of the most important elements. Well, France is the most important wine region in the world, and the wines are labeled by region, not by grape. So what I'm going to tell you in the next bullet points is the grape related to the region. So in Provence, which is the oldest wine region in France, rosé wines take about 80% of the production. This is the most important grape variety. Then in the Languedoc-Rousillon Valley, affordable red blended blends, and for sparkling, the Crémant de Limoux. These are the main two wines being produced in this area. And the Rhone Valley divided in two. In the north will be Syrah, blended wines, and in the south will be Grenache blended wines. So this is our week's episode. Don't forget to give me a like, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to the channel to receive every week something really interesting about wine. And don't forget to make me comments. I'll be happy to answer all of them. So cheers, and I see you next week.